And today we're switching gears to talk a little bit about health, and it's all about WASH. Yes, WASH, the roles of the state government in urban WASH reforms in Nigeria. We have with us a guest via Zoom, Dr. Sam Adejoh. Okedi is a WASH reform and development expert. He would share a little light on this particular topic. Good to have you. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and nice to be on your platform this morning.
All right, let's start off by just saying what WASH means. I know it's an acronym for something, but just explain to us beyond just the acronym what exactly it is about and what is the initiative aimed to achieve.
Well, it depends on who you are talking with or talking to, but generally it refers to the prospects, the potential, the systems, everything that is in place to make sure that there is water supply, sanitation, and hygiene services to every human being. In the urban areas, it's used as water supply and sanitation. Small towns, water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. So generally, it refers to water supply, and you wouldn't want to underestimate when it is said that water is life. And I started this morning by taking a lot of water to rehydrate, to clean my system and everything. And basically, we can't live without water supply. A lot of things we cannot do without water. Knowing also that the constituent body of every human being is made over 70% or more of water. Water permeates all aspects of our lives and every time, everywhere. And the subject you are beginning to introduce, which has to do with urban water supply. You know, in our geographical setting, we have three levels of setting. You have the urban areas, you have the small town, then you have the rural communities. I think your focus this morning, or our focus this morning, has got to do mainly with urban water supply services. And that requires a lot. So let's start with that. That's urban water supply requires a lot. Let's start with that.
Absolutely. Three components of the WASH initiative, which is water, hygiene, and sanitation, just like you've mentioned. For sanitation, precisely, how much of sanitation, frankly, do you think sanitation, behavior, do you think that Nigerians themselves have? Because you first of all have to be clean before you have, the government coming to help with the situation. Do we have a culture of sanitation in Nigeria? What can happen so that Nigerians can actually start and try to imbibe or continue having the culture, depending on your answer, of sanitation?
Sanitation and hygiene is a very, very wide field. And if you talk about culture, I'm from a rural community. I was born, bred, raised in a very small community, a small town. And the sanitation services were individually provided by households themselves. And if you want to talk about our sanitation, it's also been broken down. When you look at the systems that are in place, you have what you refer to as water sanitation, you have what is referred to as environmental sanitation. There is no very extremely clear line that separates these two. But if you talk about water sanitation, it refers to everything that is done to make sure that the water that is used is of good quality, serves the purpose that is supposed to serve, and then the waste that arises from the use of that water is adequately managed so that it does not impact negatively on human beings. When water is not adequately used and properly managed, it has a lot of impact on the health of human beings. And you can take for granted that over a lot of diseases that we have to deal with, a lot of diseases that we have to deal with in the country and globally. Over more than 70% of the diseases that we have to deal with, more than 70% of the situations with ill health that we find has some relation to water. Either they are water-based, waterborne, water carried, etc. So it is important that sanitation is adequately addressed. In the current context, I know that sanitation is referred to as something that is an individual thing, but it is, as much as it is an individual thing, it's also an individual thing that has to be managed for the public good. Because the waste of one human being, the waste of one household, if it is not possible, if it is not well managed, if it's not properly managed, can also affect the health and well-being of other human beings. So as much as they are individual concerns, they have to be managed. The states and governance institutions have adequately managed. They can do that in terms of capacity building. They can do that in terms of communication, etc. So sanitation is equally extremely important. But it's that we can have urban areas, water-based systems. The sanitary systems are water-based. So you have sewers. The sanitary systems are not. We don't have sewers. So you have that goes into tanks, and then the tank or disposed. We advocate that any waste that is collected, any waste that is based in water that is collected, mainly fecal waste,
right,
properly treated before it is disposed. That is where.
What are the biggest challenges that the WASH initiative is facing right now in Nigeria? Hello, can you hear me?
Our networks are fluctuating. We have to manage that. Kindly repeat that question, please.
Okay, I was asking what the biggest challenges are for the WASH initiative in Nigeria.
Will you repeat that, please? I didn't hear that properly.
Okay, the biggest challenges. Are there challenges that WASH initiative is facing in Nigeria, do you think?
Well, it's not coming through properly, but let me take a guess at this. The biggest challenge, and since we are focusing on urban area and on water, let me say this. You know that first of all, I'm glad you are saying challenges and not problems. The sector has a lot of challenges, and what people would term problems, I look at them as challenges that can be dealt with, because there is nothing that confronts us as human beings that cannot be properly managed. If you look at water supply, and I think that is where we're supposed to be dealing with, especially in the urban areas, and then the role of the governors. The governors are enablers of water supply in the urban areas. They could also be the challengers, or one of the biggest challenges that is posed in water supply in the urban areas. A lot of people want to tell you that there is inadequate money. I will say yes, as much as possible that money is a challenge. I don't think it is the overriding factor. Most of the overriding factors are human-based. And if you are looking at urban water supply, you look at what you refer to as the 5 W's. We refer to why, what, when, who, and what. The 5 W's that is properly referred to. You look at why there are challenges in the water sector. You look at what to do to address those challenges. You look at who to be involved to address those challenges. You look at when to address those challenges, and then you look at what to address those challenges. Let's look at why. A lot of investment has gone into the sector over the years. And you know that in the country currently, we are at, I think, the third National Urban Reform Program. And even before then, you've had things that have got to do with National Urban Rehabilitation Project. Now, why haven't these three reform programs yielded what they were designed to yield? It was not because of lack of money, because you have some of the three major key stakeholders, multilateral and unilateral organizations like the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the European Union. To a large extent, these are the three major investors that we've seen in the urban sector. So, not sincerely, to be sure, it hasn't been the issue of money. Why have all those investments not yielded what they are supposed to yield? It's a big question. Secondly, if you look at reform programs that have been undertaken also, there have been challenges from the beginning. In the initial instance, they were not totally coupled together. They were at the beginning focused on capacity building. And if you build the capacity of someone and the person do not have the instruments to work with, you have wasted your resources. Then the reform programs moved on to investments in infrastructure. Now, if you invest in infrastructure and the policies to manage these infrastructures are not there, or the capacities to manage these infrastructures sustainably are not there, then those investments go into waste. So we have been going in cycle. One time there is an investment and you have access to water supply in the urban areas. It functions or works for a period of time. And after a period of time, it goes back again. I was on a couple of projects by the World Bank and in a couple of states. And we were trying to say what are the islands of success, that models that are successful that can be replicated in other areas. Unfortunately, what we found were graveyards of failures. And I wouldn't call them failures per se, failures in the sense that a lot have gone into this and you are not recovering those money. But those failures could have provided lessons for the sectors to move ahead, to begin to perform better and do things better and provide water better for the people. Those are not there. So a lot of things need to be tied together. I will look at the water supply sector as a whole, the people that are involved, the infrastructures, the instruments that are required, everything as a system. In the system, you have all these components that make up that system. And if the components of the systems, if they are functioning properly, optimally, then they will be able to deliver the services optimally to the people that desire them. But if any component of that system does not function properly, or any function of that system become weak, then services will not be available optimally to the people that need them. So my take to the people in the sector is this: we should not make it look very, very complex. It's not a complicated thing. Technology is no longer its challenge. We've conquered technology. We've conquered engineering. So what seems to be the problem? What seems to be the problem are the soft components in the sector. So if those soft components are adequately addressed, coupled to the technology, that when you. And then let's look at the role of the governors at the state level. They are primary of water supply and sanitation services. In doing that, they have instruments like policies, laws, regulatory instruments, etc., that go to address this. They are also supposed to participate in funding of the services in the sector, facilitate funding of the services in the sector. They are supposed to support capacity building. But you know something that has happened over the past years, over the past period? The water supply sector have been captured, personalized by some of the governors, most of the governors. And that is why you find that in most of the states, and in about over 90% of the states, you do not have adequate water supply services in the urban area. I can tell you that any government, any state government, any governor that is determined to supply water to his people will get water to his people sustainably. We are not saying this should be free. Water cannot be free. It is a commodity that is produced with money and cannot be free. And even if you do not supply water to the people, right, people have ways, they have devised means to buy water, to have access to other sources of water. So governors should not go around politicizing water supply things and then not be able to deliver those services. What has to be paid for. I also advocate, I'm one of the advocates of the things that the state water agencies or the state water corporations should have the freedom and authority to be able to operate without interference. You can't run any state water agency, any state water corporation as every other government agency with all the bureaucracies that are required, etc., and things like that. We believe that, I personally believe that the government should hands up water supply services. Not totally hands up, but provide regulations, etc., provide what is needed. Allow the agencies some level of independence, high level of independence, set targets for the agencies, and make sure those targets are met. The agencies and then the people that work at the agencies also cannot continue to earn money like the ordinary, like all the other public servants, or all the other public servants are. So, because if you continue to do that, water supply will become something like routine. It is not something that's routine. It is a serious business, and it is not routine business that should be managed by civil service. I have advocated also that, like you have the unbundling on power supply, I have advocated for some time that probably there could be the unbundling of the water supply sector, where you have somebody who does the production of water supply, sells it in bulk to an agent who is able to distribute that water. And then the agent who distributes that water has another agent, probably contracted, to be able to collect the revenue that goes from them. We have advocated for that because what has happened, I have seen in some states that one single agency, one single state water agency, one single state water board is saddled with the responsibility of producing water, storing the water, distributing the water, collecting the revenue accrual from the services. It is something that is overburdensome to any agency. For me, my thinking is the overarching issue, especially with water supply, is the level of independence that the state water agency has. I can give you a couple of examples in African countries. I've been to a couple of African countries, smaller than Nigeria, poorer than Nigeria. The least I have spent in those countries, I'm telling you, is about 6 months. In all my stay in those countries, these small countries, poor West African countries, over 6 months and above 1 year, 2 years, none of these places lacked water. There was no single day that water was not available in the house I was staying. There was no single day that electricity was not available in the places I was staying. And that is because the so-called state water agencies or state water board or state water corporations have some level of independence. So that should be in place. We've got also the challenges that we've got to do with something like corruption and things like that. That has been with us for a long time. And we shouldn't say this is just a Nigerian thing and begin to accept that this is how things are. No, that is not how things are. It works things are working in other places, and they should be able to work for us. My take is that if there is high level of independence of the agencies without the governors over interfering, without the governors determine who get contracts for the supply of chemicals, without the governor determine who gets the contract for capacity building, revenue collection, etc. And there are instruments that are there to assist in transparency, accountability of the agency. I can guarantee you there will be adequate water supply in our homes and everywhere. And with adequate water supply, you are guaranteed good health, good performance. People are available to do what they have to do. So it is important that with all these investments that have gone in, it's been so much. The World Bank has put a lot of money. African Development Bank has put a lot of money. The European Union has put a lot of money. And every of these organizations have come with their own concept of reform or the other. What they've learned in other countries, what works somewhere. And even resources, human resources are sourced from African countries to come and support reform in Nigeria. The capacities are here. And I continue to say, except we guarantee a high level of independence for the state water agencies, the state water corporation, the state water boards, we will not be able to have water supply. There are some areas where there are some levels of performance, like you have in the Federal Capital Territory, in some states, like you have in Lagos, in Kaduna, in Kano, in some few other places. In Cross Rivers, I think there are some few other states where you have in Ondo State, I think also, there are some good level of water supply. Reform is an ongoing thing, but it's not what we should be looking forward to every time. We should not build, allow it to break down, and then wait for reform. We should not build, allow it to break down, and then wait for reform. We are going in cycles. I think what we have, we should be able to manage them adequately with operation and maintenance procedures that are contemporary and modern. Practices with schedule maintenance and turnarounds when they are important. And I can guarantee you that except the level of independence of these agencies are guaranteed, it will be difficult to get water supply sustainably in Nigeria. Thank you so much for talking.
All right. Just to also ask, how do you think that private sector partnership can assist with wash infrastructure and of course the improvement of our policy thrust for this initiative?
And I want to say this, whether on a very, very small scale, the private sector, in terms of water supply, the private sector has been very successful in terms of water supply. Because they see that there is a market there for them. They also see that the returns on their investments are also good. I did work under one of the reform programs in one of the eastern states. And I can tell you, in one of the urban areas in that state, over 80 to 90% of the water supply in that state are done by the private sector. The private sector not using conventional water supply systems or conventional water treatment systems. The private sector that have boreholes in their home have large storages and have tankers that come to distribute these waters to people. It's not that the water is reticulated also, but there are challenges with that with the private sector. The challenges of being in terms of what quality of water are they supplying to the people, what charges are they per cubic meter are they doing to the people? Are the people being taken for granted? Are they paying more than what they are supposed to pay? And compared to what people pay to the private sector and what they will pay for to the public water supply systems, you will see that what they will pay if they are taking water from the private sector is about more than 10 times what they will pay to the public water supply systems. That is because there is a lot of inefficiency in the public water supply. And it is very human that if you have one source of supply to you, if that source of supply is not meeting your need, you will go out of your way to find alternatives that addresses and meets your need. And that is what Nigerians have done through the coping mechanism. They have their coping mechanisms to get water. You go to a lot of places, go to a lot of urban areas, go to a lot of estates, the water supply there are privately managed. But these are mainly point sources. There are no reticulations, no wide reticulations, no regulations, etc., and things like that. If the environment is stable, profitable for the private sector, I can tell you they will invest in the large water supply systems that involve large conventional water treatment systems, large distribution and reticulation systems, and also the collection of their investments. Imagine a place, for example, that you call a private sector to come and invest or to take over and run some of the existing systems, which is what is possible, very, very possible. You ask them to come and run, and they put in some of their money, and they begin to supply water to the people. And when it comes to collection of revenue, a government directive comes and says, okay, no, you cannot collect revenue from this place or collect revenue from that place. Or a government directive comes and says, okay, for you to supply chemical, this is the person that you have to use. It's going to cause a lot of problems. The potentials of the private sector is huge to supply water in this country. And that is what is happening in developed countries. It is no longer government supplying these services to the people. Government provides the conducive business environment. Government provides the regulations. government checks qualities, etc., and things like that. So the potentials are high, and I hope, I continue to plead that government should be able to involve the private sector, especially in urban water supply. Government might want to argue that in rural areas there is a lot of poverty, etc., and things like that. Agreeably so, agreeably so. But we can have a revenue system, a tariff system that subsidizes the poor areas. Okay, for example, in electricity today, you have band A, band B, band C, etc., where you receive electricity for 24 hours, 10 hours, etc., and things like that. Why can't we have band A water consumers, band B water consumers, band C water consumers, and things like that? So involving the private sector will at least address a lot of the challenges that we currently face in the water supply and sanitation sector in Nigeria. I submit.
How do you think that local beliefs, cultural and traditional practices deepen, or if you like, hamper the adoption of WASH initiative across rural and urban development areas?
You know, for water supply, there are some places that people believe has to allow them not to drink those water. There are some places where you have people believe that water has to be stored in a certain place, in a certain kind of pot, and without storing water in those certain kind of pots, the water will not be useful to them. There are places where people believe that water treatment with chemicals, etc., and things like that have adverse effects on their health. Those are things. We have grown up. I mean, in my own secondary school, actually, the water we used was from the river. We had no water taps and things like that. And for some people today believe that river water are better than the other ones. Things are changing. I think the beliefs have so much of an impact on the water supply system as much as it should be. Okay, not even the people's belief, but let's forget about the people for now. Let's look at the government. There are some regions, some areas of the country that believe that water supply to the people should not cost the people anything. And there is no private sector person that you are going to take to that place that will be able to provide water in those places. So if these are the beliefs that are entrenched in some government policies and policies, it's good. You want to be able to help your people, save your people, etc. But are you going to be able to do this sustainably? So I think in that area, those are the challenges that we might have, where politicians come and say, okay, no, water in this place cannot be paid for, no matter the investment you put. And we've seen a couple of that. We've seen a couple of that but I don't think it is extremely, it is totally one of the biggest challenges. And I think if the governors, especially who are in charge of policies, regulations, master plans, capacity buildings, water supply in those days, if the analysis are laid bare before them, what people want is not just ad hoc water supply. It's not just supply today, there is no supply tomorrow. People are interested in sustainable water supply, qualitative water supply, and quantitative water supply. People are interested in those. And if the analysis are shown to, yes, I'm sure they will understand why water supply cannot be free. Water cannot be free anyway. Any government that has the resources can invest for a period of time, but thereafter, it has to be paid for. So as much as beliefs and things, not much of a hindrance. We have bigger problems, larger problems than the beliefs of people. These are things that we'll address as we begin to grow, deepen the sector practices, etc., as it were. Yes.
Okay, we're really in insightful discussions that we're having as it relates to this WASH initiative. Are there specific approaches that one can really embark upon for sustainable, adoption of WASH initiative across boards?
Thank you. There wouldn't be initiatives. There is no one bullet. There is no one single bullet. There is no one solution that fits all. What obtains in Lagos might not be what obtains in Port Harcourt. What obtains in Akure might not be what obtains in Kano. What obtains in Kano might not be what obtains in Kogi State. What obtains in Kogi might not be what obtains in Kwara. So in all solutions, in all issues of addressing water supply services, sanitation services, we will have to contextualize them. We'll have to put them in context. Like we're talking about some beliefs that, okay, water has to be supplied and it has got to be paid for. What kind of solutions are you going to look at? But like I also said at the beginning, we were searching for islands of successes and we were confronted with graveyards of failures. But what I won't call them failures, graveyard of lessons. There are a lot of lessons within the sector that if built upon.
We've been speaking to Dr. Sam Adejoh Okedi. He is a wash reform and development expert, giving us an insight into the WASH initiative across boards, the functions of the state government, its collaborations, and what exactly they are doing to having a sustained WASH initiative behavior. We're back shortly after this. To stay with us.
Save Nature TV. News in your pocket.